The boy's struggles. Setting: a dusty, rural village surrounded by dry fields, where life is tough and the landscape reflects the harsh conditions. The houses are modest, made of crumbling bricks, and the air carries the smell of earth and sweat. The sun beats down relentlessly, making the daily chores even more exhausting. Main character. Kofi, a young man barely in his 20s, stands out as an embodiment of resilience. He's tall, lean, with skin weathered from years of working in the fields under the scorching sun. His clothes are threadbare, a faded shirt and tattered pants, patched in places from years of use. His hands are calloused, strong from years of labor, but there's a sense of weariness in his posture. His eyes are tired but filled with determination, the kind of determination born from survival, not hope. Plot. Kofi has spent most of his life fighting for survival. Since the untimely death of his parents, Kofi has been the head of his household. He has 2 younger siblings, a brother and a sister, both too young to understand the weight of the world Kofi carries on his shoulders. They depend on him for everything: food, shelter, and protection. But the burden is overwhelming. Kofi wakes up before dawn each day, dragging his tired body out of bed, knowing that today will be much like yesterday. He walks for miles to the local market, hoping someone will need an extra pair of hands for the day. Some days, he's lucky. He's hired by a local merchant to help unload goods or carry heavy sacks of produce. The pay is never much, just enough to buy a few meager meals for his family. But on days when work is scarce, Kofi returns home with nothing but hunger gnawing at his stomach. His younger siblings don't complain. They eat what little food is available, their faces marked with the quiet acceptance of a life they can't change. Kofi watches them, a lump forming in his throat, knowing that this life, the one of endless struggle, is all they have. Despite the hardships, Kofi holds onto his dignity. He never resorts to begging for food. Instead, he continues to search for work, hoping against hope that one day something will change. But as the days drag on, that hope grows dimmer. His dreams seem impossible, dreams of education, a better life for his siblings, a house with a roof that doesn't leak when it rains, food on the table every night. But the reality of his life is harsh and unforgiving. Society looks at Kofi and sees nothing but a poor, uneducated young man who will never amount to much. No one offers him a helping hand, and no one believes he deserves a better future. He is invisible, a stain on the fabric of a society that values only wealth and status. Kofi often wonders how long he can keep going, carrying this weight on his shoulders. His dreams are far away, like a distant star he can't quite reach. Every day feels like a cycle of work, hunger, and exhaustion. The future feels bleak, and he is unsure how long he can continue in this endless loop. Conflict. Kofi is trapped. He is caught in the unrelenting cycle of poverty, where every day is a fight to survive. He has no formal education, no skills beyond hard labor, and no way out. His dreams feel like an illusion, something that only the wealthy can afford. He wonders if his life will ever be different, or if he and his siblings are destined to live in this harsh world forever. As the sun sets on another long day of hard work, Kofi sits on the edge of his bed, staring out at the darkening sky. The weight of the world presses down on him, and he feels the crushing loneliness of being caught in a system that offers him no way out. His hope for a brighter future is slipping away, and he doesn't know if he has the strength to keep fighting. But in that quiet moment of despair, a glimmer of something, perhaps fate, perhaps an opportunity, shines through. Kofi doesn't know it yet, but his life is about to change in a way he never expected. The village square is bustling with life, a contrast to the loneliness Kofi feels at home. Market stalls line the streets, vibrant with colorful fruits, vegetables, and goods. The air is filled with the sounds of merchants haggling, children laughing, and the rustle of people moving about their daily business. In the midst of this lively scene, Kofi walks with his head down, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his circumstances, trying to make his way through the crowd to find any work for the day. At the edge of the village, behind large iron gates and nestled atop a hill, lies Madame Titi's mansion. It is a grand structure, full of opulence and wealth, its towering walls and finely manicured gardens a stark contrast to Kofi's simple existence. The mansion is a symbol of everything he desires: comfort, security, and a future beyond his current reality. But it's also a place that feels distant and untouchable to him. Main character. Madame Titi is a woman in her late 50s, with a regal presence that commands attention. Her once black hair is now streaked with silver, tied into a neat bun that rests atop her head. She wears elaborate, expensive clothing that reflects her status, dresses made of the finest silk and jewelry adorned with gemstones that glimmer with every movement. Despite her outward beauty and grace, there is a loneliness in her eyes. Though she has everything money can buy, she is emotionally detached, with no one close to her heart. She is a successful businesswoman, known for her sharp mind and ruthless dealings. But her wealth and success have come at a cost. She has spent her life building an empire, only to find that no amount of riches can fill the emptiness of her heart. Plot. One afternoon, while Kofi is sitting in the village square, exhausted from his fruitless search for work, he overhears a conversation between two men standing at a nearby tea stall. They are gossiping about Madame Titi, the wealthy woman who has lived alone in her mansion for years. The men speak in hushed tones, as though afraid of being overheard. "Did you hear?" one of them whispers. "Madame Titi is looking for a husband." The other man chuckles. "A husband? She's rich enough to buy anything she wants. Why would she need a man? She's offering a fortune to any man who agrees to marry her," the first man replies, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Not just a small dowry either. A fortune. All her wealth, all her property. It's all there for the taking. She's desperate." The conversation continues, but Kofi's mind has already stopped listening. The idea seems absurd to him, but at the same time, it catches his attention like nothing else has. He thinks about his life, his daily struggle, his hunger, the ever-present worry about his siblings, and something in him shifts. Could this be the opportunity he's been waiting for? A way out of the life he's been trapped in? As much as the idea disturbs him, Kofi can't deny the appeal. Madame Titi, a woman so much older than him, offering him a chance at wealth and stability. It feels wrong, unnatural, and yet, it is the only chance he has. His heart races as he wrestles with the decision. Conflict. Kofi is torn. Part of him feels disgusted by the thought of marrying someone so much older, a woman he does not love, and yet, another part of him sees it as his only escape from the endless cycle of poverty. He's proud, but his pride seems like a luxury he can no longer afford. His siblings are hungry, and his dreams are slipping further out of reach. He spends the rest of the day in turmoil, unable to shake the thought of Madame Titi's offer. The more he thinks about it, the more he realizes that this could be his only chance to provide for his family, to give them the life he's always dreamed of. But at what cost? The more he wrestles with his dignity and the pressure of his circumstances, the more his mind keeps returning to the same question: is this what it takes to escape the poverty that has defined his life? Would he be willing to sacrifice his self-respect for the chance to change his future? As night falls and Kofi walks home to his small, run-down house, he can't stop thinking about the mansion on the hill. His life has been one of struggle and hardship, but Madame Titi's proposition offers him a way out, even if it's a path he never imagined taking. The entrance of Madame Titi's mansion is imposing, with tall, iron gates that seem to separate Kofi from the life he has always known. The mansion itself stands at the top of a hill, its grandeur visible from a distance. The white stone walls are adorned with intricate carvings, and the windows gleam in the sunlight, reflecting the wealth and luxury within. As Kofi approaches the gates, he feels a mix of awe and dread. The air is thick with the scent of flowers and polished marble, a stark contrast to the dust and sweat of his daily life in the village. The surrounding gardens are meticulously cared for, with perfectly trimmed hedges, vibrant flowers in full bloom, and fountains that glisten in the sun. The mansion feels like another world entirely, a world of wealth and comfort that Kofi has never imagined he could be a part of. Plot. Kofi stands before the gates of the mansion, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never imagined he would find himself here, at the threshold of a life he could never have dreamed of. His hands are shaking, and his stomach churns with unease. He is about to step into a world far beyond his reach, and the reality of his decision starts to sink in. As the gates open, he is greeted by the staff, who are dressed in fine uniforms and look at him with polite curiosity, though there's a subtle air of judgment in their eyes. They lead him inside, and Kofi is overwhelmed by the opulence around him. The floors are made of marble, the walls are adorned with expensive paintings, and the air is filled with the scent of exotic perfumes. Every detail is a testament to Madame Titi's wealth and power. Despite the beauty of the mansion, Kofi feels like a stranger in this world. The grandeur only serves to emphasize how different his life is from the one he is about to step into. He follows the staff through long hallways, his footsteps echoing in the silence, until they arrive at a large, well-lit room. And there she is, Madame Titi, sitting at the head of the room. She is composed, her posture regal, her expression cool and calculating. She is everything Kofi expected, an older woman, dressed in fine clothing, her hair pulled back into an elegant bun, her face showing little emotion. Madame Titi looks at him with sharp eyes, taking in his ragged clothes and the uncertainty that radiates from him. She has no time for pleasantries. She speaks plainly, her voice calm and steady. "I assume you've heard of my offer," she says, her gaze unwavering. "I am looking for a husband. A man who will marry me in exchange for my wealth, my home, and my future. You will live here, with me, and in return, you will inherit everything I have when I die. All I require from you is loyalty, not love." Kofi stands frozen, his heart racing in his chest. Her words hit him like a slap. This is what he had come here for, yet hearing it spoken aloud makes it feel even more real, more unnatural. His mind races with thoughts of his siblings, the life they could have if he agrees. But at the same time, the idea of marrying a woman so much older, for the sole purpose of money, disgusts him. His pride, his dignity, everything that makes him who he is, feels like it's being stripped away. Madame Titi continues, unaware of the internal battle raging inside Kofi. "I know this is not a proposal of love," she says with a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "But I am tired of being alone. I want someone who will take care of my legacy, someone who will manage what I've built. You may not want this, but it is the only thing I can offer." Kofi feels his stomach twist. The decision weighs heavily on him. He came here seeking a way out of poverty, but this feels like a compromise of everything he's ever believed in. Conflict. Kofi is torn. The idea of marrying a woman he does not love, a woman so much older than him, fills him with disgust. He has always dreamed of love and respect, but now he is faced with the reality of his situation. He has no education, no skills, and no way out of his current life. He looks at Madame Titi, sitting so confidently in front of him, and he feels the overwhelming weight of his choices pressing down on him. His family, his younger siblings, need him. He has promised them that he will provide, that he will give them a better life. But at what cost? Can he truly go through with this? Will he ever be able to look at himself in the mirror again, knowing that he sacrificed his dignity for survival? Madame Titi's eyes study him closely, waiting for his response. There is no kindness in her expression, only the cold, calculated resolve of someone who knows exactly what they want. Kofi knows that if he walks away, he may never have another chance like this. He could return to his life of struggle, always worrying about how to feed his siblings, always wondering if he will ever break free from poverty. And so, despite the deep unease in his heart, despite the disgust that rises in his throat at the thought of this arrangement, Kofi makes his decision. He looks at Madame Titi and nods, his voice barely a whisper. I agree. The grand wedding ceremony takes place inside Madame Titi's opulent mansion. The walls of the mansion are adorned with golden drapes, chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, and elaborate floral arrangements filling every corner. The soft glow of candlelight illuminates the faces of the guests, who are dressed in their finest, whispering among themselves. The sound of classical music fills the air, blending with the quiet murmur of gossip. The atmosphere is one of luxury and extravagance, but Kofi feels an overwhelming sense of unease. He stands before the priest, surrounded by fine food, gold, and crystal glasses, but none of it brings him comfort. The guests, a mix of wealthy villagers and distant relatives, watch him closely, their eyes filled with judgment and curiosity. Kofi can feel their eyes on him, their whispers cutting through the air like daggers. Plot. Kofi stands nervously at the altar, his eyes darting around the room. The weight of the moment presses down on him. This is no ordinary wedding. There is no love here, no romantic dreams of a shared future. Instead, Kofi feels the heavy burden of survival, of doing what he must to ensure a better future for his siblings. Madame Titi stands beside him, regal and composed, her face expressionless as she looks ahead. As they exchange vows, Kofi feels the sting of the judgment in the air. He's not sure whether he is more ashamed of the whispers around him or the gnawing sense that he has sold a part of himself in exchange for this marriage. The vows, the formalities, they all feel like a farce. He is marrying for wealth, not love, and the weight of that truth fills him with sorrow. His stomach turns as he looks into Madame Titi's eyes, knowing this marriage is nothing more than a transaction. When the ceremony ends, the guests offer polite congratulations, but Kofi can't shake the feeling that they are pitying him, judging him for his decision. As he and Madame Titi leave the ceremony, Kofi feels the eyes of the world on him. He walks with his head down, trying to ignore the whispers and the stares, but it's impossible to escape the feeling of being a spectacle. Later, as the night draws in, Kofi is led to the wedding suite. The room is just as lavish as the rest of the mansion, filled with silken sheets, gold accents, and ornate furniture. The soft glow of candlelight flickers in the room, casting long shadows. But as Kofi steps inside, the air feels thick with tension. The joy he expected to feel on his wedding night is replaced by anxiety and confusion. Madame Titi follows him into the room, closing the door behind them. She stands at the foot of the bed, her posture straight and unwavering. Kofi can see her carefully controlled expression, her eyes sharp and calculating, yet there is something else there too, something unexpected. She is not nervous or excited like a typical bride would be. Instead, she is calm and composed, as though she has done this 100 times before. Sit, she says, her voice steady but devoid of warmth. Kofi hesitates, unsure of what to do. He had imagined this night many times, he had dreaded it, but he never expected it to feel so detached. He sits on the edge of the bed, unsure where to place his hands or what to say. His mind races with questions, but none of them seemed to matter. He had assumed that this night would be filled with passion or at least some attempt at affection, but Madame Titi's demeanor shatters those expectations. She looks at him, her sharp eyes assessing him as though he is nothing more than a piece of furniture. I know you're nervous, she says, her tone cold but not unkind. But I do not expect love or passion from you. I married you for loyalty and respect, not affection. We are not here to fulfill any romantic fantasies. This is a practical arrangement, Kofi. I need someone I can trust with my wealth, with my legacy. And in return, you will have everything you've ever dreamed of. Kofi is stunned. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that there might be more to this marriage than the cold exchange of wealth. But Madame Titi's words bring clarity. This is not a marriage of love. It's a marriage of necessity. For her, it is about securing her legacy, and for him, it's a way to escape the poverty that has defined his life. His expectations, built up from the idea of a wedding night filled with some form of emotional connection, are shattered. The reality of his situation settles over him like a heavy cloak, and Kofi suddenly feels more like a pawn in a game than a husband. Conflict. Kofi's mind is a whirlwind of confusion and frustration. This marriage was never meant to be a union of hearts, but the harsh reality of it hits him harder than he expected. He feels conflicted about his role in this marriage. He had agreed to it out of necessity, but now that he is here, he questions whether he can ever truly accept it. Madame Titi's calmness only deepens his uncertainty. She does not demand affection, but the lack of warmth leaves him feeling cold. He had expected some form of intimacy or connection on this night, but instead, he finds himself trapped in a marriage that feels like a business arrangement. The lack of emotional connection leaves him feeling empty, yet he can't escape the fact that he agreed to this life. He looks at Madame Titi as she moves toward the window, her back to him. She has already removed her wedding dress and now stands in a simple nightgown, staring out into the night. She seems so distant, so removed from everything he had hoped for. But as he watches her, something shifts within him. He realizes that this is not about him, this is about survival, about getting out of the cycle of poverty that has held him captive for so long. Kofi takes a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside him. This is not the life he imagined, but it is the life he has chosen. For better or worse, he must accept it. The vast mansion's library is a quiet, serene place, filled with high shelves of leather-bound books and the soft scent of aged wood. The windows overlook the beautifully manicured gardens, where the sounds of chirping birds mix with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Kofi spends hours here, trying to make sense of his new life. He finds solace in the solitude, though the weight of his situation often feels too heavy to bear in these peaceful surroundings. The dining hall is equally grand, an enormous room with a long table made of dark wood, set with fine china and crystal glasses. Meals are served in silence, the clinking of silverware the only sound filling the otherwise still room. Madame Titi sits at the head of the table, her posture straight and commanding, as Kofi hesitantly takes his seat across from her. It is a strange arrangement, one that Kofi is still not used to, but he has slowly come to accept it as part of his new reality. Plot. As the weeks pass, Kofi begins to adjust to his new life, though he never fully accepts it. There is a constant tension in his chest, a lingering feeling that he is living someone else's life. He spends his days trying to stay busy, reading books in the library, learning about the business world Madame Titi has built, and occasionally meeting with her advisors. He is often alone, but it gives him time to reflect on his situation. Madame Titi, on the other hand, remains as distant as ever, though there are small moments where she surprises him. She is never warm, but she has an unexpected kindness beneath her cold exterior. One afternoon, while Kofi is in the library, he receives a note from Madame Titi, telling him that his younger siblings are to be taken care of, schooling, food, and medical care are all to be provided for them. Kofi is taken aback by the gesture. At first, he dismisses it as another act of duty, another business transaction to fulfill her own legacy, but over time, he begins to notice the consistency of her actions. She takes care of his family as though they are her own responsibility, and Kofi slowly begins to realize that she is not as heartless as he once thought. One evening, as they share a quiet dinner together, Madame Titi speaks to Kofi, her voice quieter than usual. I know you are confused, she says, setting down her glass of wine. This marriage was never about love. I didn't marry you because I wanted affection. I married you because I needed someone to trust, someone who would inherit what I've worked for. Kofi is stunned. He had suspected there was more to Madame Titi's offer, but hearing her speak so plainly about it catches him off guard. She continues, I have no heirs. No family left to carry on my name. I needed someone who could take over my legacy when I'm gone, someone who understands what it's like to struggle. You are that person, Kofi. Kofi looks at her, his heart heavy. He never imagined that this marriage, which he had thought was a lifeline out of poverty, was in fact a way for Madame Titi to secure her wealth and her future. Her need for security, for a trustworthy successor, was what had driven her to make such an unusual offer. As the days pass, Kofi begins to see Madame Titi in a new light. He sees her not as the cold, calculating woman he once imagined, but as someone who, despite her wealth, has also suffered. She is not just a businesswoman, she is a woman who has spent her life accumulating wealth, only to realize that without someone to share it with, it has no meaning. Kofi begins to respect her, not out of admiration for her wealth, but for the strength it must have taken to build everything from the ground up. There is no romance in their relationship, but there is a quiet understanding between them. Kofi sees that Madame Titi's stoic nature is not simply a product of her wealth, but a result of a life filled with loneliness and loss. For the first time, he realizes that perhaps they are not so different after all. Both of them have been shaped by their circumstances, both of them have had to fight for everything they have. Conflict. Kofi is torn between his growing respect for Madame Titi and his lingering resentment. He feels gratitude for the way she has cared for his family, for the security she has provided them. His siblings are thriving in the mansion, living a life that Kofi never thought they would have. But at the same time, Kofi struggles with the idea of being trapped in a marriage that offers him little emotional connection. He feels conflicted about his role in the marriage. He is not her husband in the traditional sense, and he is not a part of her life in the way he had hoped. He still longs for freedom, for a life where he is not beholden to anyone. But as the days go by, he realizes that living is not as simple as he once thought. He has responsibilities now, not just to Madame Titi, but to his siblings and to the life that has been promised to him. Kofi begins to question if this life, the wealth, the security, the stability, is worth the cost of his personal freedom. The growing respect he feels for Madame Titi complicates his emotions. He no longer sees her as just a cold, calculating woman, but as someone who, like him, has faced hardship and made difficult choices. Still, there are moments when Kofi wonders if he made the right decision. He yearns for a life where he is free to make his own choices, but he also knows that such a life is not something he can afford. The weight of his decision presses on him every day, and the internal conflict between gratitude, resentment, and the desire for freedom grows stronger. The scene opens in Madame Titi's study, a room filled with the scent of aged books and polished wood. The walls are lined with shelves containing valuable records, legal documents, and old family portraits. The room is elegantly furnished, with a large desk at the center, piled with papers and a single glowing lamp casting a warm light over everything. Outside the windows, the garden stretches out in all its grandeur, lush greenery, vibrant flowers, and carefully pruned trees that have been tended to for years. It is a peaceful, serene space, representing the wealth and success Madame Titi has carefully cultivated over the years. Kofi stands in the doorway of the study, his heart heavy with anticipation. He has lived in this mansion for years now, and in that time, his life has changed in ways he never expected. No longer the desperate boy struggling to survive, Kofi has found purpose and stability in a life he had once thought impossible. The mansion, the wealth, the legacy, he has come to understand that this is his responsibility now. But today, something feels different. Madame Titi has summoned him, and he knows that this meeting will change everything. Plot. Madame Titi, seated at her large desk, looks up at Kofi as he enters. Her sharp eyes study him for a moment, and for the first time, Kofi notices a softness in her gaze. She gestures for him to sit across from her, and as he does, the air is thick with unspoken words. I've spent my life building this, she begins, her voice steady but carrying a hint of exhaustion. But I never wanted it to end with me. I needed someone to trust, someone who could carry it forward. I chose you, Kofi. Kofi listens, his heart pounding. He has always known that Madame Titi's wealth would one day be passed on to someone, but hearing her say it out loud sends a wave of emotion through him. With a solemn expression, she slides a thick envelope across the desk toward him. He hesitates before picking it up, knowing that what's inside will shape his future. As he opens it, he finds the deed to the mansion, her business interest, and a bank account in his name. Everything that Madame Titi has worked for, everything she built with her own hands, is now his. Kofi's fingers tremble as he holds the papers. The weight of the documents feels symbolic, like the weight of a life he never imagined for himself. He looks up at Madame Titi, his eyes wide with disbelief. She watches him calmly, as though she's been waiting for this moment for years. This is my final gift to you, Kofi, she says softly. I wanted you to have everything I've built because I believe you can do more with it than I ever could. You've earned it, and I trust you. Overwhelmed, Kofi struggles to find his voice. The reality of what has just happened sinks in slowly. This is not just wealth, this is a future. It's a future filled with opportunities, possibilities, and, most importantly, the ability to make a real difference. His life has changed in ways he never thought possible. The boy who once struggled to survive is now in control of an empire. But it is more than just the material wealth. What touches Kofi the most is the fact that Madame Titi has trusted him with her legacy. She could have chosen anyone, another family member, a distant relative, anyone who could continue her business, but she chose him. A man who once had nothing but the will to survive. Conflict. Kofi stands in the study, staring at the papers in his hands. He is now a man with responsibility, and that responsibility feels heavier than the fortune in front of him. He never wanted wealth for wealth's sake. What he truly wanted was a way out of his struggles, a chance to give his siblings a better life. But now that he has it, the pressure to honor Madame Titi's legacy is overwhelming. How can he possibly live up to the trust she has placed in him? He was never trained to run a business or manage wealth, he was just a poor boy from the village. Now he has to learn how to navigate this new world, balancing the business side with the life he once knew. Kofi also reflects on the life he had before, all the struggles, all the hardships. It's difficult to reconcile the boy who once begged for work with the man who now holds the keys to a mansion, a fortune, and a future. Has he changed for the better, or is he simply another man caught in a web of wealth and power? As Kofi stands in the garden later that evening, the evening sun casting a golden light on everything, he feels a deep sense of gratitude. Madame Titi has given him more than just money. She has given him respect, a chance to live a life he never thought possible. But with this gift comes a new set of challenges. He no longer just wants to survive, now, he wants to live with purpose, to honor the trust that Madame Titi has placed in him. His mind races with thoughts of what to do next. How does he manage this wealth? How does he ensure that he doesn't squander the opportunities Madame Titi has given him? And, perhaps most importantly, how does he continue to honor the woman who gave him this life?